I grew up in the 70s in government housing on the south side of Johannesburg. Throughout all of my childhood and my teenage years, I was surrounded by the proverbial alpha male types. In high school, it was often the first team rugby players that were thought of as alphas. But my recollection of them was mostly a group of thugs and bullies, always posturing, full of bravado, and jostling like squabbling cavemen for the prime spot of status. Fast forward to today, not much has changed. As someone who has taught mostly men how to protect themselves for over 3 decades, I have seen the alpha male narrative played out countless times on the mat in fight training. To this day, I regularly witness the alpha male paradigm deeply entrenched in our collective psyche, invariably emphasizing traits like dominance, hypercompetitiveness, superiority, and status. The consequences to men? I have personally seen how embracing the alpha male paradigm can have profound psychological and spiritual consequences for men. Psychologically, the pursuit of this archetype can foster a brittle ego, predicated not on true self-worth, but on external validation. This often results in a heightened sensitivity to perceived threats, leading to chronic stress, anxiety, depression, an inability to control aggressive urges, and a defensive stance towards the world. Moreover, the suppression of emotions and vulnerability deemed as weaknesses in the alpha framework can hinder emotional growth and lead to emotional stagnation. Spiritually, this pursuit can alienate a man from the deeper interconnected aspects of existence. By placing competition and dominance at the forefront, he may inadvertently distance himself from feelings of oneness, compassion, and empathy, vital components for spiritual growth and alignment. Ironically, in striving to become the epitome of strength and control, a man might find himself more fragile, isolated, and disconnected from his authentic self and the universe at large. The paradox is that the very traits he sought to eradicate, vulnerability, uncertainty, and dependence through acquisition of the alpha male traits, become amplified in the shadowy recesses of his psyche, clouding the revelation that true strength isn't achieved by suppressing one's shadows, but by embracing them. Framed as the epitome of male achievement, the alpha male construct is often propagated as an evolutionary inheritance as well as an echo from our tribal origins. Yet this binary perception of masculinity is not universally accepted, nor is it historically consistent. For a contrasting perspective, consider the Hadza people, an indigenous hunter-gatherer group in Tanzania. Within this community, men shoulder the responsibility of hunting, arguably one of the most alpha tasks imaginable, at least in Western eyes. However, the Hadza's value system diverges starkly from Western expectations. Here, humility and cooperation are revered, especially within hunting contexts. Rather than praising a successful hunter, arrogance or excessive pride in one's prowess is often met with disdain and mockery. Anthropologist Frank Marlowe, during his in-depth studies of the Hadza, discovered that any form of showboating is deemed counterintuitive to the community's cooperative spirit. In Hadza culture, a man's worth is not in surpassing his peers, but in enhancing the collective welfare. Let me say that again. In Hadza culture, a man's worth is not in surpassing his peers, but enhancing the collective welfare. This Hadza paradigm disrupts the prevailing notion that alpha maleness is unavoidable among men, and as such promotes a broader discourse on masculinity's true essence. It sheds light on a fact that the expression of masculinity as inevitably an expression of dominance, hypercompetitiveness, superiority, and status is in fact a largely societal construct. In the face of escalating societal pressures we now face in the modern world, it is imperative that we dissect the so-called alpha norms, recognizing their origins and consequences. While this narrative might still remain largely the dominant view of masculinity in the modern era, it's not an unequivocal reality, but rather a selective interpretation stemming from a modernist ideology centered on materialism, fierce competition, and individualistic success. Men in the modern world are suffering largely because they are told overtly or explicitly that to be a true man, to be a man of worth and be respected, he needs to acquire alpha male status in this society. Yet, it is this very embrace of the modern alpha that prevents us men from experiencing the genuine camaraderie and mutualistic bond of brotherhood demonstrated by communities like the Hadza. In stark contrast to the prevailing alpha male narrative lies the vision of what I will term the holistic male, a paradigm of masculinity that treasures empathy, collaboration, and emotional intelligence. This counter-narrative recognizes strength not in dominance, but in vulnerability, resilience, and the capacity for introspection and growth. The holistic male embodies a masculinity that fosters deep connections, values active listening, and promotes a sense of community over individualistic competition. For men, embracing this alternative would mean liberation from the stifling confines of traditional masculinity, permitting and encouraging broader spectrum of genuine self-expression. It heralds a world where men are empowered to form deeper, more genuine relationships, free from the constant pressures to assert dominance. In this space, success isn't measured by conquest, but by the richness of one's character and the depth of one's relationships. The pervasive narrative of the survival of the fittest, with the alpha male at its zenith, perhaps serves to deter us from the realization that rivalry isn't a requisite for self-fulfillment. Although it might sound idealistic, envisage a world where men globally avoid the race for supremacy, shunning superficial status, and instead genuinely support one another, inspiring for shared objectives to help each individual actualize their unique potential. Possibly only a paradigm shift in collective consciousness might usher in such an era where divisive notions like warfare against each other as men and the world loses their allure. A world where success isn't measured against another's failure, but where every man's success uplifts the whole.